got the little spinning wheel, and there we go. Now we are officially live on multiple platforms at the same time through the beauty of the internet. Good morning, everybody. It is still AM, so it's still morning. I encounter some people that believe that if it's past single digits AM, that it's no longer morning. However, waking up at 11 a.m. is still waking up in the morning for me. So today, we have an interesting guest with us on our live stream. So if you have been paying attention to any of the posts that I've been putting out the last couple of days, you'll notice that there is a gentleman named Adam that has decided that he wanted to try to track a journey. Okay, Adam is an occupational therapist in Stark County and tested positive for COVID-19 on the 14th of April. So Adam, welcome to the live stream.
Thanks for having me on.
So why don't we just start with what is your occupation? What do you do for a living?
Well, that's a question I get about every day. I'm an occupational therapist. And so people say, oh, you're a physical therapist. No. Physical therapists are a lot different. Occupational therapists are the people that train you how to take care of yourself after you've been ill or injured.
Okay.
So that's what we do.
What do we, I know there's a couple of people that are in the occupational therapy program at Walsh, and they've kind of tried to explain the difference. I've seen it in the hospital, more like physical therapy gets you physically prepared to try to attempt the occupational side almost. That's kind of like the transition that I've seen, where you get into the occupational therapy, and the occupational therapy is like, okay, you used to be able to do this activity this way. Now we have to try to do it this way. Here's how you're going to adapt.
Yeah, that's part of it. That is definitely part of it. Some of it is that. Some of it is adapting to a new situation for folks. The other part is that we use activity to help people regain lost function. So we're more into doing stuff to make you more physically capable. So you'd be amazed at how much physical recovery you can make from waxing a car or any number of other things that we do.
Mr. Miyagi knows how much you can gain from waxing a car.
He would have been a great occupational therapist.
So COVID-19 has been kind of this, I would say almost an enigmatic thing that's been floating around. It's everywhere. Everything that you see is covered in COVID-19 news. I mean, the Facebook space, the social media platforms are all covered in it. What really was the trigger that you decided that you wanted to start sharing like daily little updates after testing positive with COVID?
Well, because there's a lot of the view of COVID-19 has pretty much been a 30,000 foot view. Everybody's talking about the statistics and numbers and all of these things. I have coworkers who have had it. I have coworkers who are fighting through it now. And I wanted to bring a little bit more personal perspective to the whole discussion. It's not somebody out there who's got this thing that might kill them. It's your mom, it's your dad, it's your cousin, it's your crazy neighbor. It's more than just numbers on a page.
Right.
So I thought maybe if I just kind of give people a feel for what's going on, maybe that'll help them understand that it is what it is. Plus, I don't know how this is going to shake out. I have no idea. I feel pretty good right now.
Right.
So, it's interesting to me.
Yeah, and I know that when we first kind of talked, that's what you kind of said, was that you were more curious than anything about what it was going to do. So right now we're sitting, I mean, really, you said that you tested a couple of days prior to the test coming back positive. So we're really probably looking at about a week, potentially. I mean, 6 to
be a week on Wednesday. Yeah.
Positive potentially.
Yeah, it'll be 7 days on Wednesday.
Yeah. So why don't we the people that have watched the pictures and have seen kind of the updates have known what has been happening day to day. But why don't we just kind of start at day one, or even after you knew that you were exposed and you took the exam? What was that mentality like? And then did you have symptoms, and kind of start at the beginning of the journey?
Okay. So I was exposed at work, even though I was wearing protective gear. I had my N95 mask and my gloves, and was an absolute maniac about hand washing. I
Yeah, I'm
knew I
pretty
was
sure that all of
exposed.
us are like, I mean, our hands are all cracking and
Oh yeah,
everything at this point, working in the hospital system. I
yeah,
know mine are personally.
yeah, yeah. Between the hand sanitizer and the hand washing, you know you're getting there when every time you put your uh, hand
Hands in.
sanitizer on, it makes your eyes water a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
But but so anyway, um, I'd worked with several patients who tested positive, and discussing it with the physician that comes into the facility. Uh, I said, I don't know what's going on. I said, I just, I have no fever, no nothing. So I've got this nagging sinus problem, but that's just seasonal allergies. And he looked at me and he said, well, we had somebody else with seasonal allergies and no fever who tested positive. You probably ought to get checked. I'm
Hmm.
like, huh, all right. Next morning, I called my family doctor and said, what do you think? And she said, yeah, you better go get tested. And there you go. I've been asymptomatic. I've had my temperature checked every day for the last 3 weeks, and I have never
Hmm.
had a temperature above 99.
Hmm.
So,
And that's something that, I mean, that's the standard protocol right now, is checking your temperature before coming into the facility.
right before
Hmm.
you come, before you leave. Yep.
And
Yeah.
so you never experienced a temperature above 99.
Nope. Nothing.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's it's bizarre. This is a strange bug. Um, it's definitely not behaving like your typical flu by any
Right.
stretch of the imagination.
Right. I was telling somebody just the other day that I thought that it was extremely curious that the symptoms were so light early on, and I was
Hmm.
trying to, because I was trying to re-educate somebody on why this is a little bit, I guess creepier is the wrong word, but maybe
No,
Trojan
it's
horse,
accurate.
like Trojan horsey,
Yeah.
kind of hidden, where
Hmm.
they were talking about the fact that um, influenza has killed more people, or X, Y, and Z statistic. And I said, that the hospital systems, we've been prepared for things like influenza because we've gotten the chance to prepare over about the last 100 years. When we got smacked with the Spanish flu, we were like, okay, we should probably set things up that we can predict, like, this is going to be recurring. We're going to set up our healthcare system to handle that. So when you add something on top of it, that if you have influenza, regardless of whether you're young, old, or anywhere in between, generally you get symptoms, and you get
Right.
like 3 to 4 days beforehand, you're infected, it runs its course, and then you move on with life. But what makes this so interesting, and like you said yesterday, annoying, is that the symptomatic part may not even start. Like, you had the seasonal allergies, you don't even have a fever, and now they realized that you're still contagious in that asymptomatic period, which is what
Yeah.
makes it so dangerous as far as its ability to spread.
Yeah, and that was what I was afraid of, is that I was typhoid Mary.
Yeah,
I just, for the love of heaven, I did not want to be that guy that, made other people sick.
right.
So, I was really using the protective gear more for my patients than for myself,
Yeah.
and the way I looked at it all the way along.
I think that that's a
Um,
lot of our mentalities too. I mean,
sure,
being in the healthcare system is just, we need to make sure that we're protecting our patients as much as possible because
absolutely. Yeah, that's what we're all about. I mean, we're
right.
all about our patients. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this line of work. Um, One thing I can tell you about this thing though is I'm a young, healthy guy. No, don't smoke, little overweight, but don't have any pre-existing conditions that put me at risk.
Right.
So for me, this is a low risk experience. The odds of me getting in a bunch of trouble are very, very small.
Right.
Um, My patients, on the other hand, are all elderly, and I've seen what this can do, and it hits hard and it hits fast. And so I'm just, if there's anybody out there that's got elderly family members that's paying any attention, do your best to protect them. Do your best to keep them away from this, because it's a completely different animal, completely
Right.
different.
Now, and that's something. I mean, your son is involved in RNA and mRNA reconstitution, studying at University of Michigan, right?
Yep.
I just said the M word on an Ohio live stream, but
I
I'll get
funny story. He asked my permission before he took the fellowship. I laughed. I said, that's all for fun. This is real life. Take the fellowship. So
die hard through and through. I respect it.
yeah, cut that boy. He bleeds scarlet and gray.
I respect it. That I could definitely see that being a question that came out of his mouth. So he's focused on studying that arena, right? What if
Yeah.
you were to try to make that comparison, just for the sake of educational purposes, if you were going to try to explain the difference to somebody between influenza and coronavirus, or COVID-19, as far as, like you said, it hits hard, it hits fast, it's sneaky. How would you divulge that information or explain that information to somebody?
Well, what I would explain to people is that it's fast. That's the biggest thing. It's so fast. It spreads fast, and in a certain element of our population, it works fast on them. It's normal flu. We know how that works.
Right.
And where I work, if I have a patient that's showing flu-like symptoms, you isolate them, you watch them for a couple of days. Usually they spike a temp for a couple of days. You use things to bring that temp down, and you keep them hydrated, and they just in 3-4 days, 5 days are fine. Or if you can see when things are turning sour.
Right.
This thing, you don't have that kind of time. You don't have that kind of time. It works so fast. I've seen some scary stuff. Let me just put it that way. I've seen some stuff that shocked me, and I've been a therapist for 25 years.
Right.
And I've seen what there is to see out there. And to be honest, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything that hits this hard and this fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of around the same. I mean, I've am down to. I mean, I part-time at the hospital now. So I'm not in the hospital quite as much as some of my full-time counterparts. But I have taken care of COVID patients. And that's something that I've tried to explain to people as well, is that it's different. It's a different feel. It's a different disease process. Influenza, stuff like that. You end up with that secondary pneumonia a lot of the time, and that's what causes issues with people. But like you said, generally it's we know we have Tamiflu and virals for influenza that can help mitigate symptoms. We have hydration protocols. We have these types of things because we've been studying the disease for so long. And we have herd immunity and vaccinations, which is something that we don't have for COVID-19. That's something that I wanted to kind of touch on too, from your perspective, as far as people's understanding of what that looks like. Why is it important for people to understand that the lack of herd immunity and lack of vaccination is something that really puts us at risk for the spread of this type of thing? Understanding the social distancing and trying to grapple with that, because right now we have people protesting at the state house and doing all these other types of things because they believe the lockdowns are a massive conspiracy theory, which is to be debated. But that is that's something that's off-putting to a lot of people, is that we have diseases that are just pandemic capable. What makes this different?
Yeah, I think people don't understand the consequences of herd immunity, how you get there. I'm all for it, by the way, if we can do it. But my question from the get-go has been, okay, how do we protect our folks 65 and older
Mm-hmm.
if we try to go for a herd immunity sort of solution through the natural process of the virus? Um, it, it's a no-win situation, basically.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten so used to vaccines where you take the vaccine and you can be exposed to it and you're in no danger. We don't have anything like that. And
Right.
so everybody is in danger of catching this thing. So that's something that people can't wrap their heads around because they're not used to it. And then the other thing is that um, the only way out of this is kind of like landing on the beaches of Normandy.
Yeah.
Uh, it's gonna be it's gonna be ugly. No matter what we do, we can stretch it out. We can stretch the ugly out, which is kind of what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
If we stop doing what we're doing now, it's going to get a whole lot of ugly really fast. New York City is a great example of what happens when you can't control your population. Maybe because, I mean, I'm not saying New York did a bad job. I'm just saying that they've got people stacked on top of people, stacked on top of people, and this is an airborne virus.
I was gonna say, yeah,
So,
there's only so much that you can do when stuff
right,
is that densely populated. I was just talking
right.
to um I'll just say a gentleman yesterday about the phases of the reintroduction process that have been introduced. Um
Mm-hmm.
and about how, that could potentially those types of phases could potentially work in, like you said, stretching the ugly out. Because really, the end goal of all of this is to not overwhelm the healthcare system. So that's the
Right,
entire point of flattening the curve, the entire point of avoiding a peak, all of that kind of stuff is so that we don't get to the point where we're having to triage people on vents. Um,
right.
but people are like, well, if we stretched the curve out too far, then we're dealing with the crash economy. There's all these types of different factors that go into it. Um, but I was talking about those phases of reintroduction. I was like, that it makes sense in an area like Canton, Ohio, where there's a lot of spread. There's rural communities. There's people that can go to the grocery store once they're reintroduced, and like, a restaurant would actually be able to function with a social distancing type of reservation structure in
Mm-hmm.
a small town,
Yep,
because there may only be 10 or 15 people eating dinner there on a nightly basis anyway.
right.
So if they say there only can be 5 and you have to make a reservation and we spacing the tables out, that could potentially work. But in a place like New York City, where the population is 50 times like our entire municipality,
Yeah,
then it is a completely different ball game. Those
yeah,
phases may not mean as much because you open up one thing and now you've got 100,000 people headed
right.
that direction.
Yeah, and the I guess the way I'm looking at it is it's kind of a two-edged sword. It's where if you if we loosen up on the social distancing, quarantine, whatever you want to call it, if we loosen up on that, we're going to get an increase in the number of cases. But if we don't, our economy is going to tank, and people lose their jobs and lose their livelihoods,
Mhm.
and it's there's like I said, the whole thing. People seem to think that we can get through this unscathed, and that's
Right.
just not. We're going to take a hit. I mean, we're taking a hit, but this is not something we can get away with or get away from without paying some kind of price. And the
Right.
question is, what's the least we can afford? What's the least we can get to pay? I don't know the answer to that. I have no idea. All I
Yeah.
know is that this thing is serious.
Well, and like you said, like the only thing that we have available right now really is that 30,000-foot view.
Right.
So we're trying to make decisions, and I've been trying to advocate, whether you agree with the decision of the governor or you disagree with Dr. Acton's decisions. Anytime I get into a conversation like that with people, I always ask them. I actually make a comparison, and Marquise Watkins, if you end up watching this, he was my boxing trainer when I was training for the Golden Gloves back in 2016, and he would always say, it's really easy to critique a fighter when you're outside of the ropes. He said, when you're inside of the ropes and you're actively getting punched in the mouth, it is a
Yeah,
completely different ballgame.
yeah, and
And
that's
and so
exactly right.
I've been trying to tell people, have you ever been the governor of a state? Like, no. Okay. Have you ever been somebody that is meant to run the entire public health system for a state or a country?
Yeah,
No. Okay. So what people have to understand about leadership, and I wanted to kind of interject this into the COVID conversation, is just when you're a leader and you understand that decisions that you make are going to affect, for me, the most people that I've ever affected with a decision is about 70, right?
yeah,
Not anywhere near the population of the state of Ohio.
right,
So that weight is huge and can be very taxing, especially when you're having to make decisive decisions that not everybody's going to agree with quickly. You have to think pragmatic and utilitarian for a short period of time and then get outside of that and be able to actually process things and look at it. But sometimes, when you're getting punched, you just got to throw out a couple of jabs and try to sight your hook in before you can
right.
actually land that knockout punch.
Right.
And that's kind of what I've been trying to tell people is, maybe give a little bit of grace, with some of the decisions that are happening. I was like, whether you 100% agree with them or not, decisions have to be made. And unless you've carried that weight, it's impossible to really be truly critical of what those decisions were.
Well, and also this. So I don't know. You do boxing. I do woodworking. Every time I look back on how I did something a year ago when it was new to me, I kind of cringe
Mm,
because like, why did I do it that way? What was I thinking? Because I'd
right.
never done it before. And experience is a hard teacher,
Yes, it is.
um, but usually a pretty good one. Uh, so we have no experience with this. As a nation, as a people, we've never dealt with anything like this in living memory. And
Right.
so this is these guys are literally flying by the seat of their pants.
Hmm.
And to come down on them or Monday morning quarterback them or second guess them, yeah, sure, that's fine. But understand that this is not something that they have ever done before or any
Yeah.
of us. And so
Yeah.
we're just doing the best that we can figure out to do.
Right.
And that's all we can do.
And
And
that's
we're
and
going to
that's the
learn from
key there.
this. And God forbid, if something like this happens again, we'll do it better next time.
There. Yep.
You know,
110%.
it's people need to understand that this is not just an ordinary thing, at least not from what I can tell.
Yeah. I mean, and whether or not, this is, I don't remember the latest thing that I've seen on social media. I think
I
that they
lose you,
did.
Jan?
Can you hear me? Woo.
Huh. Well, I guess I lost you, buddy.
Can you hear me? Adam? Yoo-hoo. Baby, everything looks good on my end.
What the heck?
Oh, we got him frozen. We back? Can you hear me? All right, guys, we're gonna give Adam a quick second to try to hop back into the stream. For those of you that are watching right now, if you can shoot me a comment and let me know if you can still hear me, that would be much appreciated. We'll just give it a couple of minutes here, see if he pops back in. Also, if you're watching and you have a question for Adam, go ahead and shoot me the question as well. You can comment on either Facebook, the YouTube, or Twitter, and let me know if you have any questions for him when he pops back in. Sergeant Schaefer, man, how are you doing? Is state going well? So, for those of you that are just tuning in, this is a conversation with Adam, who's a positive COVID-19 patient. Looks like he's back. Can you hear me, buddy?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. Technology is amazing when it is
great when it works.
Amazing, yeah. Okay, so with the, I mean, we were talking about the grace of decision making, right? And leading and having to make those pragmatic decisions and everything else like that. First, I'm gonna continue giving this shout out here. So this gentleman right here, for those of you that don't know, I was in the Air National Guard for almost 7 years, and Sergeant Schaefer was one of the main recruiters on my installation. He is now doing 100% teleworking with recruiting, but he is definitely one of the most high pace, like enthusiastic, energetic people that I've ever met when it comes to the military, and so knowledgeable. So if you guys if there's even a hint, I'm going to kind of do a shameless recruiting plug here because I definitely loved being in the Air National Guard. If you have even a hint of wanting to potentially do that, Michael Schaefer is the name, and recruiting is his game. So go ahead and hit him up. You will be able to see his name in the comments there on Facebook. But so this grace of decision making, and as we move forward, like we said, we're kind of trying to avoid the ugly. But your experience thus far with the symptomatic COVID-19 has really not been too insane from what you've kind of explained thus far. Like you said, the asymptomatic fever is one thing that's odd. But the rest of it, I think that yesterday we were talking about experiencing a little bit more nausea more than anything. Why don't we dive into what you've been feeling the last couple of days?
I think yesterday was a migraine. I get those occasionally for some reason when I get stressed out. And after it kind of cleared away, I'm kind of looking at it last night thinking, that was a migraine. That was a bad migraine, but that was a migraine. So I think that's all it was, because today I feel completely normal.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've had like chronic migraines and stuff like that in the past, or was that just something that kind of shows up when you
get them about
infections?
Yeah, I usually get them. They're usually stress related, and I usually get them 3-4 times a year. So I'm pretty sure that's what that was.
Gotcha. So, what about your appetite and everything like that? Has any of that really started to dissipate?
So my appetite's not as good as it was. I'm not hungry most of the time. I kind of have to force myself to hydrate. Even coffee doesn't taste that good to me, which is very disturbing. It's not that but I know, right? My sense of taste hasn't really been affected. I can't say that food doesn't taste good. I just don't want any.
Right.
And that's all right. I got an extra 40 pounds on me that, if I lose 10 of them, that's okay.
You got your winter insulation layer.
Yeah. We could start losing that a little bit. Yeah.
What about now? The main thing that everybody's kind of concerned about is the breathing, right? And you talked about preventing a cytokine storm inside of your lungs.
Right.
Why don't we kind of dive into what your understanding of what that is, and then talk about whether or not you've had any breathing issues or symptoms in the chest.
Right. So basically, how this wee little beastie works is
I love that you
creates
call it that, by the way.
He creates an environment in your lungs where inflammation just goes out of control. and that's good for it because it replicates itself well in inflamed tissue. It likes that. So the idea is that you want to head off that inflammatory response in your lungs. Read some articles. I'm not sure if they're worth the paper they're written on. I had my son look over one of them, and he said that it's a reasonable article. So this author recommends that you up your vitamin C intake and take a little bit of melatonin. And because this guy has made the observation that little kids don't get this and don't get it very badly if they do get it. And his theory is, well, kids produce a lot more melatonin than adults, so therefore it must be the melatonin. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, but melatonin's one of those things that, like, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it's not going to negatively affect you if you take a little bit of melatonin on a daily basis.
Right. So I basically took a 10 milligram melatonin pill, broke it into quarters, and I take a quarter with every meal, and then I take a 10 milligram at night, and I sleep well.
I can imagine.
Like a rock. And but the vitamin C, basically, I'm learning you've got to titrate your dose. If you take too much, the results are a little unpleasant. So your body will get rid of it one way or the other. I've taken a little bit of, I've knocked it down to about 250 milligrams 3 times a day, which is plenty. And the vitamin C is pretty good at soaking up free radicals and things like that. So hopefully this will do some good. The doctor I was talking to, we were talking about Plaquenil, which is chloroquine, the thing everybody's all worked. Everybody's all worked up about. He pretty much figures that because of the fact that it suppresses the immune system a little bit, or interferes in the immune system a little bit, that's what's heading off the lung problems and other folks that are using that. Plus, you throw some azithromycin in on top of that, and that covers any kind of bacterial pneumonia that's trying to get started, and it has an anti-inflammatory effect of its own.
Now you just hit kind of a key point there. Like I've gotten into so many conversations, and I keep saying conversations. I won't say arguments. Heated conversations with people just over these different types of treatments and everything else like that. One of the ones that I just recently encountered is, why are we using an antibiotic to treat a virus? They've been telling us to never use antibiotics to treat a virus. And, if we have a flu, they're not allowed to prescribe us antibiotic, blah, 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 blah. So why are we doing it now? And I'm like, okay, well, it's not necessarily to treat the virus. Like you said, I mean, it's from the articles that people are reading and putting things together, it's not necessarily always the virus that kills people, and we've seen that with influenza. We know that it's not necessarily the flu that gets them, it's the pneumonia that forms from the flu. And people don't understand that pneumonia is really any type of inflammatory lung process where fluid starts to fill up in the lungs and becomes infected with a bacterial infection. And so that's where the azithromycin is coming into play.
It makes sense to me. I mean, I don't know 100%. In fact, I don't even know if anybody knows 100% what the mechanism is for this stuff working. It's people.
I think that's what's so disconcerting for a lot of people, is that a lot of times we look to PhD level scientists, researchers, physicians for guidance, and the physicians are just kind of like, yeah, we're giving it our best guess. Let's all try to figure this out together. Give us a little bit of credence as we kind of go.
People need to understand that happens in healthcare a lot. There's an awful lot of flying by the seat of your pants, and
that never happens.
Oh, absolutely. My favorite example is Botox. Botox was used off-label to treat muscle spasm and spasticity years and years before it was kind of a thing.
Right.
I knew, yeah. I mean, basically a bunch of doctors said, hey, this ought to work. Shouldn't hurt anybody. Let's give it a shot. That's what they
Yeah.
do. I mean, to an extent, that whole first do no harm thing, every doctor I know takes that very seriously.
Right.
If they figure something's not going to hurt you and it might help you, they'll give it a shot.
Right.
That's probably a lot of how this chloroquine thing happened, this Plaquenil thing. Some doctor somewhere said, hey, maybe this will work. Doesn't hurt anybody. It's an old drug. We know how it works. We understand its toxicity levels very, very well, and it's well tolerated by people. Works for this. Works for inflammation. Let's give it a shot.
Right.
I mean, this happens all the time in
Mm-hmm.
healthcare, and people need to understand that. And it's a shame that there's such a political uh, political thing going on with it, because that's just not fair. That's just
Right.
not fair.
Yeah.
That's
It's not fair to science. It's not fair to the physicians. Like,
not fair to the people that could be
no.
benefiting from it.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, I
I agree.
I know that if right now that my doc that I work with would put pink bunny rabbits in people's rooms if he thought it would help. I mean, you do what you got to do, and
Right.
people need to understand that.
Yeah. And the whole, I mean, padding numbers, there's a whole different rabbit hole that we can dive down with that, but it's hard pressed for me to believe. First I'd like to share this message from Sergeant Schaefer. He says, thank you for sharing your experience, Adam. I wish you the best in recovery.
Oh, thanks, Sergeant.
Like I said, good guy. But these physicians making the decision since the beginning of medicine, period. I mean, that's been the discovery process, like you said, is that Hippocratic oath, trying to avoid harm wherever possible, and then trying to do good. If it's not going to hurt somebody, and it's studied, it's tolerated well, like we know all of these different mechanisms of action, we should give it a shot.
Right.
Um, and with the whole political landscape as it is currently, I was just having a conversation the other day about, you know let's if you really want to see what it's like on the front lines, regardless of all this other kind of stuff, we wish that we could take people in and show them what it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what it's
Yeah.
like standing on the backside of a negative pressure room door, holding up a sign so the other person outside of the door can run to go get you supplies, to put it through it like a closed system so that you can reach in and grab it. And that's how long it takes to get supplies if your patient is, getting a little wonky, because
Yeah.
you can't just run out of the room
Right.
or run in the room if it's getting weird. And what
Right.
that feels like as a healthcare professional, because we're so used to being able to, I've only been a nurse for coming up on 2 years, but even after 2 years worth of work, you start to get into these, like, your body just responds, when you see a junctional rhythm, or you see VTAC, or you see something, like, your body just starts to go, and you don't have to think about the decisions quite as much, as you're just like, okay, this is the protocol, this is what I know how to do. If they don't have a pulse, I'm slapping them down, we're starting compressions, and we're getting the ball going. But this is throwing a completely different dynamic into the game,
Right.
because I can't just run in there. I have
Right.
to try to get all PPE'd up, and then I can go in.
Yeah.
Um, and it's very hard pressed for me to believe that every single physician, every single hospital system, and every single nurse in the healthcare system that have all taken Hippocratic oaths or oaths to Florence Nightingale are all corrupt, and we're all trying to hide things, from the general public in the healthcare system.
Yeah. That's conspiracy stuff drives me crazy. When my son had leukemia, well-meaning people would send you stuff about, oh, they're hiding the cure from cancer. I'm like, no, they're not. They're no, 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 no. These people, everybody wants to be the next Jonas Salk.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to be the next Madame Curie. Everybody wants to be the next Louis Pasteur. That's the first thing. So there's a large measure of self-interest in all of that. And then the other thing is that you don't go into this stuff unless you want to help people. And if you've got something in your hands that can help people, you're going to use it. That's all there is. That's all there is to that. And people who think otherwise are just frankly ignorant. They've never worked in the healthcare field. They don't know how the people in the healthcare field think. And so this whole coronavirus thing, as an old therapist, I've seen enough situations where you don't win, where you can't help, where what you do doesn't work. And so the PPE, the personal protective gear, is all a part of that. Okay. It's part of why people are dying, because you can't react in that moment's notice. You have to take the time to protect yourself and to protect your other patients. Yeah. And that time might be the difference. Now, hopefully it's not, but that's just a part of this whole thing. And that's another reason why this thing is so nasty, is because of the difficulty of caring for people with it, because of the contagion factor. I wish people would just understand that it's not the flu. Yeah, it's just not the flu. So yeah.
For those of you that are just tuning in, this was a conversation with a gentleman named Adam, who tested positive for COVID-19 on April 14th of 2020. An occupational therapist in the area with a son that is pursuing a PhD at the U of insert letter here from the state up north. But still bleeds scarlet and gray from what I understand, so everything's fine.
Yeah.
And we've had a awesome conversation about a bunch of different factors relating to COVID-19. So if you're just tuning in now, the live stream is going to be wrapping up here in a couple of minutes. But once it's wrapped up, the video will post, and you'll be able to go back and rewatch the entire thing, which I highly, highly recommend, because we've definitely touched on a bunch of different angles to this thing. Along with talking about what it's been like being positive with COVID-19 over the past between 6 and 8 days here. So, Adam, I'd like to thank you for your courage, first off, being willing to share this type of information so that we can get a little bit more boots on the ground type of view rather than that 30,000 foot view. And then secondly, I know that there's a lot of people in my listenership and in the area that are pulling for you and praying for a safe recovery. So I look forward to touching base again next week and seeing where we're at.
All right. Well, thanks, John. Thanks for having me, and best of luck with your endeavors.
I appreciate it, brother. All right, guys. Well, we will talk to you soon. Tomorrow, don't forget, I will be live streaming at 7 p.m. with Kathy Yaros for the hashtag Let's Talk About Something Else. And then also tomorrow at 8 p.m., I will be live streaming with Mr. Mark Leach, who is a local country artist. And we're going to be talking about some of the things that have impacted his family store up in Barberton, as well as the new song that he just released. So if you are interested in that, go over to the Apex Communications Network Facebook page, find those live stream events, and let me know that you're interested, and show up and have a good time. All right, guys. Till next time, I'll talk to you.